Time to break down the latest Florida State recruiting news.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Today's episode is going to be straight to the point and about recruiting, and it is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. We're going to have a little fun with this. We had one official visitor this past weekend, Honest Kenberry, really good corner. He's originally from England, but now lives in South Carolina. We're going to talk about him, a couple of recent offers, and then what is, in my opinion, the greatest group of offensive linemen they have coming up over the next few weeks to visit Florida State in a short stretch, probably in that school's history. Now, considering Florida State's offensive line history is not necessarily D-line history, that's one thing, but still, for the history of the school, I've never seen a list like this, and I got the rankings and all that, so we're going to talk about it. But let's start with this past weekend's official visitor, cornerback Honest Kenberry. Really, really good football player. Just watching the film, didn't take very long. He is the definition of twitchy. With Florida State's history at corner, he certainly fits in. Breaks on the ball really well out of his back pedal, whether he's running at side straddle, whether he's straight back pedal, whether he's flipped his hips, and he's beat on a play, or at least it looks that way, doesn't matter. He's so twitchy, he can change directions unlike most players. And if he had come up through the ranks, 7th, 8th grade, played 7-on-7 in the United States and had been just entrenched in one of the traditional programs in the South, Alabama, Florida, whatever, he'd be ranked even higher. He's somewhere around number 200 to 300, depending on the rankings. He's not that low in my book, though. That's first thing. The official visit list also puts things in perspective. Utah does not recruit players in the Southeast very much. They really don't recruit players from South Carolina. Utah already had this kid on campus. You can like or dislike Utah, but their coaching staff maximizes. They are phenomenal. A lot like Iowa, Wisconsin of old. They find a really good athlete that they have to hit on. They're going to coach them up, and they find those guys. Utah went after this kid early. That should tell you something. And here are these other visits: North Carolina, Penn State, Tennessee, and Florida State. Obviously, he's very good. This is a program that he's at. It's a little private school ironically, right in the heart of the state where University of South Carolina is, but he's not visiting there. So going to leave the state. He's not going to visit Clemson either unless something's going on that I don't know about. He had a great visit to Florida State. He was interviewed by several different people, and he mentioned that Florida State is now his top team. I don't know which team is the most likely to get him if it's not Florida State, because he's only taken 2 visits, Utah being the other. But Tennessee, Penn State, those visits scare me a heck of a lot more than North Carolina does. I think Mac Brown and UNC are about done. I think that program's all but dead with all the players they had leaving. That's an interesting recruitment, though, because Florida State's DB room, like if you want to go into that, you got to have a lot of confidence. So for him to say that the Noles are number 1 after the visit tells me he's comfortable with the program, and 2, he's not afraid of competition. If you're going to play for Florida State, you better be really, really confident, especially at corner. Like, they're loaded. You got to come and bring your A game. So good for him. I'm not sure of his timeline, but if he's got visits lined up through the end of the month, most kids will decide early July and be done. But Honest is a heck of a ball player. Next, Florida State offered a defensive lineman, and this is classic Norvell and his staff, Hagen's too. They offered a kid out of the greater Jackson, Mississippi area. It's a D tackle named London Simmons out of Hartwell Academy. And it's just not that it really matters, but this is a program that's started to have some players. And everybody tries to recruit Mississippi a little bit, but Florida State has had some really good history. Kes McCorvey, among others, have come out of that state for Florida State. I don't really think that you can go wrong. The per capita rate for putting players in the NFL out of that state's great, but he also has history in recruiting. Talking about Norvell and his staff. Remember now, he was at Memphis. If you're at Memphis, you have to recruit Mississippi, especially the upper half in Jackson. You have to recruit that. So he knows all these schools. And this kid's somebody that's got some pretty important schools on his list. Alabama's bringing him in for an official visit. Now he's going to go visit Florida State as well later this year. I just like that Florida State does its due diligence. It's something I bring up a lot, and this is another case of it. They've gotten to know the young man before they offered, took their time with it, and he's 6'3", 295. If you can play D-tackle at Alabama right off the bat, let's be honest, chances are good that you're a heck of a football player. And now Florida State's gotten to know him. He's going to visit. He's a kid that's from an area that the staff has familiarity with. They have the right contacts. This isn't a kid, though, that is a 5-star because of where he's from. I've said this many times, and I'll say it again. Most of the scouts do not live outside of the radius of Alabama, Georgia, and Florida, and most really are in Georgia and Florida because of the high density of prospects. It's easier to get to see kids. There aren't very many people that scout the state of Mississippi. It's massive, and the prospects are spread out. That is a horrible combination because people want to see a ton of kids at one place at one time. Now, Jackson's got a few more guys, but still the state in general, like little small towns have big-time players. It's the hardest state arguably in the country to scout. So I have a feeling I'm going to dig into his film a little bit, talk about him a little more sometime in the next week. But I'm really curious about London Simmons because 6'3", 295, man, that does not grow on trees. And after what we saw in the transfer portal here recently, it shows how important that position is. Florida State has started to get some bigger guys. The last class was pretty good at D-line. Adding another body like this would benefit the Noles. From size to speed. The other kid here that they just offered is Malik Clark. He's out of Rock Hill, South Carolina. It's per capita one of the best cities in America. It's got 3 high schools there. Northwestern's a tradition-rich program. Rock Hill High is their traditional rival. And then South Point, where Jadeveon Clowney is from, among others, is the other one. And it's less than an hour from Charlotte. So you get kids kind of coming across the border there. You can say that it's suburb, but great football. He's got Notre Dame visit. He's got a few other schools. But here's the thing to know. He fits what Florida State's trying to do, especially with this year's roster, speed. He has a recorded 10.55 in the 100 meters. If you can run like that and you've got another year of high school left, you're obviously burning. So this is one of the fastest high school football players in the country. Offers from across the board. Florida State is now set up for an official visit with him. And I think this is the kind of guy that would fit in, like similar size, speed coming out of the high school ranks as, ironically, Florida State's Malik Benson, who just transferred in from the University of Alabama. So that's another player Florida State's going to add. Great talent. And I've seen his film. Like, he makes plays in the open field that you cannot teach. I'm not saying that he's the next Tamarick Vanover, but he can really run. So Florida State's looking to get more speed and more size. This is a kid that could do that. Again, the name is Malik Clark. The last thing I just want to finish up with, and this is just to put things in perspective, as I alluded to at the top of the show. Florida State, historically, if you had to pick one spot that they're the weakest at, and obviously Florida State has great football tradition, it would be offensive line. One of the reasons is for whatever, there's been just a dearth per capita of great offensive tackles to come out of the state that were already developed. Like guys you could just see. A lot of guys with raw skills end up being good, but not a ton of just ready-made big-time offensive tackles. So, Florida State's went to Georgia, Maryland, Texas, wherever to get players. And they're doing that again this year. There's a little more in-state than normal, but still they ventured out into several places. And I was just kind of putting together the official visit list. There are a couple kids that are guards that are elite prospects, including Solomon Thomas, who could play tackle, but he just wants to play guard. He's committed to the Noles from Jacksonville Reigns. But this is the greatest collection of offensive line talent, in my opinion, that Florida State has ever had take OVs in one small group, like either that specific weekend or over a couple weekends. So let's just say the month of June, because first thing here, these kids are changing visit dates like crazy, and I can't keep up with it. But just follow me along here. Solomon Thomas is a player ranked at the top 30 in the country. He's committed to Florida State, might be the best interior offensive lineman in the country. I've seen him play several times. He's a horse, 310 pounds, 6'4", just a powerhouse. I think he will play early at Florida State. Special player. He's, in my opinion, a 5-star. No question in my mind. And that's his offer list is insane. There's really not too many schools that haven't offered him. Even some of the elite programs out west have. But also you've got Ty Haywood at Orion High School in Denton, just outside of Dallas. The 247 composite has him number 11. He's like 6'6", 305. He's going to visit in late June. Lamont Rogers out of Horn High School in Mesquite, another Dallas area player. He's number 15 overall. He's going to visit in late June. Josh Petty from the Atlanta area, Fellowship Christian. He's number 32 in the nation. He's another offensive tackle. Peyton Joseph, former Florida commitment, ironically, could play inside or out, probably better at inside, but he's ranked 177. And then Zaire Addison, who I think his ranking is way too low. I think he's a top 100 player conservatively, but his 247 ranking has him at number 206. He's got Bama, he's got Georgia, he's got Ohio State, he's got USC, Oregon, etc. He's visiting. That's just some of the kids that Florida State has coming in. Now, I have harped on this for a long time, on this very show, that Florida State, if they're going to consistently make the playoff and consistently do something when they get there, they need to develop more of their talent on the lines and front seven in general, where there's just more physicality, more togetherness, etc. Linebacker, D-line, O-line, those are units that got to play together a little bit more, but especially O-line. Run gap fits are one thing, but like if one lineman on the offense fails, oftentimes the play blows up, even if the other 10 do their job. It's hard. It takes a lot of time. Most linemen don't compete at a high level until their junior year at the earliest. There are exceptions, obviously, but here's the key. If you get them into your program out of the high school ranks, Atkins, anybody else, doesn't matter what school it is, you have more time to develop them, get guys to play together, and then excel. What Florida State has done with the transfer portal in the offensive line is unprecedented. They still should not count on that each and every football season. And after this year, they're going to lose some more guys. And then, et cetera, more and more. Every year, they're going to lose some of these guys they brought in that were sophomores, juniors, et cetera, from the portal. If they can get 4 and 5 guys 2 years in a row, let's say this class and the next, that are top-end players, there's no reason to believe that the offensive line that they take out of the portal, maybe you take one guy instead of 2 or 3. You're mitigating your risk for failure because the portal is uber expensive for offensive linemen, especially tackles, and defensive tackle. Like you have to overpay insanely to get a mediocre guy. Not a dude, because there are hardly any of them, to get a mediocre guy. There are very few. Florida State got lucky this year and got the kid from Georgia. That's one, but that's the exception. Again, not the rule. If they get some of the kids I just mentioned, Solomon Thomas already in the fold, but if they got any 2 of like Haywood, Rogers, Petty, Joseph, Addison to add on to that, like then you're in the territory that Georgia's kind of recruiting, right? Notre Dame usually does, or Bama or Texas on the offensive line. These teams that just try to play power football a lot of the time and do it, Florida State would be able to take their game to another level. Just for reference, the Noles averaged around 150 yards rushing a game. But if you start getting all your top-end linemen year after year, that number is going to go up. We all know that Norvell and his staff do a tremendous job of scheming it up. But now it's just more talent playing together longer. So that's something to think about. Tomorrow, I'm going to go over the full list. They finally have a big official visit weekend coming up this coming week. I'm going to go over the list and start to talk about some of the leans and the feelings about where things stand. Might even talk a little bit about comparison, Florida State to some of the other schools. That'll be on Locked On Seminoles on Tuesday. But I just wanted to kind of go over where recruiting is. It's been a slow period because Florida State has most of its visits backlogged to the 21st weekend. Their June 21st weekend is massive. I don't know why they decided to do it that way. Maybe they wanted the last visit because that is the last weekend you can do visits in June. But that's Florida State's plan. So we're kind of waiting a little longer than some of the other schools. But this upcoming weekend does have some players, and we're going to go over each one of them here in Locked On Seminoles. Hope you all enjoyed. Take care, and I will see you later. It's been a Locked On Seminoles.